And welcome everybody. I'm Robert
Yeah.
Aducci, and we are here with Ross Watson and J.M. Defoe, and we're going to talk about Myth, Tales, and Legend. Myth, Tales of Legend. So welcome Ross and J.M.
Hello.
Thank you, Robert. I got to say that intro is pretty sweet. I love the dragon and the animation. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
it was awesome.
Yeah. So my name is Ross Watson. I'm the lead designer for Myth Tales of Legend.
And I'm J.M. Defoe, and I'm the lead writer for Myth Tales of Legend. You might have heard this intro if you were following the Campfire chats.
We've been doing the Campfire chat videos on Ulisses International channel for some time. In fact, you can see me before I started growing this wonderful beard. Um, just wanted to say Guten Tag to any of our German fans who are watching the show. Hello to all of our English-speaking fans. We're just really great to have you guys here watching us again, talking about our game. And actually, this is a special thing because right now, if you want, you can go out and find a quick start for Myth Tales Legend called the Lost Barrow. It has all the rules you need to kind of get an idea of what the game system is like. It's got pre-generated characters, and it's got a pretty sweet adventure that was written by JM. In fact, I mean, this is like the first time I've had a chance to talk to JM about it live, so watch his face for this reaction. JM, what do you think of the Lost Barrow?
It was sort of shocking to see it in print. It was awesome and great to see it laid out. I shared it with my wife. She did the editing, and I think it looks great. So I'm looking forward to hearing kind of responses from people now that it's out in the wild, kind of what they think, and looking forward to talking more about Myth. I just actually finished up the first draft on a large chunk of new setting development, which has been a lot of fun. And
that's going to be part of our first wave of products for Myth Tales of Legend. So yeah, once again, if you want to check it out and you're kind of curious, we have a quick start. It is available on Drive-Thru RPG. There was probably a link that will be in this video somewhere. So yeah, go check that out, and we can of course talk more about it. That's what this whole episode is really set about, is to talk about what is Myth Tales of Legend. I can think of no one better to start us down that journey than J.M. Defoe. What is Myth Tales of Legend?
Well, I mean, it is a fantasy role-playing game set in the world of the Myth board game. And if you've been following the Ulisses channel, Eric has been talking a lot about Dawn of Heroes, the new kind of updated version of the board game. And Ross and I have the honor and the responsibility of kind of taking the vision that was put in the board game and kind of explored in the LE rulebook and the new rulebook that just came out. And sort of stewarding that into a tabletop role play game, which requires a lot more of a setting than a board game might necessarily need. So we're expanding on some of the lore, expanding on some of the locations that are on that gorgeous map from the book, taking some of the adventures and fleshing them out and making them setting information and putting it all together in a very open-ended way, I hope, so that GMs can just take the book and the setting and run with it.
Exactly. Myth Tales of Legend is basically just an expansion of the board game into a role-playing game where you can explore that world and take on the rules of characters from that game and make your own stories. And we wanted to kind of lean into that particular aspect of Myth Tales of Legend. That's kind of why it's called Tales of Legend, is because we wanted to give players more opportunities to tell the stories of their character. So in a way, like, I was inspired by a lot of really interesting story games that are out there. I was inspired by things like Lady Winter and the Death of Magic. But just to be clear, Myth Tales of Legend is not a story game. I'm actually like an old school RPG guy. I love rules and I love systems and I love dice. So I saw things in the story game. I was like, this is cool. I'd like to use some of this. But I definitely did not want to make a story game. I wanted to make a role-playing game that had all those rules and systems, but also included more opportunities for people to tell stories. So one of the things that sets Myth Tales of Legend apart is that focus. It's got a little bit more focus on narrative. For example, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. that was one of the things that kind of intrigued me about Ross's initial pitch. Is, I mean, I am a tried and true like traditional role playing game experience person. I enjoy, like, about as far into the narrative world that I get is sort of like 7th C second edition or 13th Age. But I love the ideas of stories, and Ross and I have had hours of discussions of the theme of stories and sort of using the game, kind of creating this meta narrative construct of, hey, we are gathering around the table to share in this group experience where we actually have memories. It's not just me remembering when Ross took Kamchatka from me with a great die roll and risk. Like, Ross saved my life. That is the memory that I have emblazoned in my head the week after Ross kills the dragon before it kills me. And so we wanted to bring kind of this aspect of us gathering around the table to tell our character stories, and the characters are actually gathering around a campfire to tell their own stories.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called Tales of Legend because it is a role-playing game with the idea that your characters will go on a journey. They will start as very, very novice adventurers. Anybody who's played the Myth board game knows that you start out with like a fireplace poker or a sharpened butter knife. Those are your adventuring gear. And that is how Myth Tales of Legend starts out too. You are fresh off your farm or orchard, or if you lived in a city, maybe you were an urchin, whatever. You've just began your adventuring journey, and that means you don't really have a lot of what we consider traditional hero gear just yet. That's actually part of your journey. Is you are going from this very, very humble beginning to a different place, and your journey will evolve over time. These are the things that the game sort of is intended to encourage. So it uses a dice system that was first used in Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory. We are calling it the Campfire System. So anybody who's not familiar with it, it is a dice pool of d6s that you roll. You count your successes, and if your successes are equal to or higher than the difficulty number, you succeed at the task that you're given. We have several videos where we talk about how the rules work. Go check Ulisses International. We cover quite a bit of how the rules work. We actually did like a several part one on combat not that long ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the basics are discussed there. Also, the Quickstart covers 90% of this as well. So I'm not going to get too deep into the rules of the game, but I will say it is a D6 dice pool system, and you typically will roll a handful of dice to determine what if your character is successful or not. We use this idea that Jam was talking about, the meta concept of the campfire. And how does that work? So basically, the idea is, in a game of Myth Tales of Legend, you are playing your characters as novice adventurers, but you are also playing them as their future selves, sitting around a campfire telling stories of their past adventures. And that's really, that's kind of the bookend. That's the narrative device. So if you are in the game trying to accomplish something and fail, and you spend a resource, we have what are called Campfire Points, and you spend a resource to re-roll those dice. What's happening in the idea of the campfire is you guys are sitting around the campfire telling the story of your past. You're like, oh, and then you picked up that rock and totally dropped it, and then the other character's like, no, that's not what happened. You're remembering it wrong. And that's where the idea of the campfire becomes kind of an evolving tale over time. You get to see one of the decisions you make as a group is kind of like, who do we want to become? Who do we want to end up as sitting around that campfire? And over time, as your characters level up, you will actually define more of what your group's dynamic is, not only with each other, but with groups outside the campfire and things of that nature. So the campfire is an evolving story that changes when you level up. So it's a natural point when all the players are leveling up their characters. They're like, cool, let's level up the campfire, and that changes a few things as well.
No, I even added a little bit of something like that into one of the things that I'm writing for this other product, is the fact that you can drink from this spring to to heal, but you have to tell the story of the memory of the forest that it imparts to you. As kind of taking in this magical healing spring water. So we're leaning into the ability to give the players a way to kind of add narrative cues and narrative tells into the story, which I think is always fun and empowering as a player.
For example, we encourage in Myth Tales of Legend, if you're traveling from point A to point B, if it works within the circumstances of the game, we encourage you to make that a montage and actually like ask each player like, well, what is something you do on the journey between A and B? So you get more chances to tell your character story. This is actually, it's involved in many different aspects of the game. There's an aspect of it in combat where you can get a bonus if you describe your attack in a particular way. You can you get the montage we just talked about. We talked about there's things called tales, which are kind of like interludes from Savage Worlds, where you may be asked to roll a die and use that die to generate a narrative prompt, like I knew things had taken a change when, or taken a turn when, and then you tell a brief story about your character. These things are not intended to be burdensome. They're not intended to be something that slows the game down. They're intended to add something cool when you have an opportunity to do something that is like, I want to tell something about my character to the rest of the group.
So and you also get to.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Russ. We also have the idea of telling your character's tale in a pretty unique mechanic that you created, Ross, for how titles work. Yes. Do you want to talk about titles? Because I think that's a fun narrative component of the game as well.
Okay, so in brief, a title is a thing you can earn. It's an epithet, if you will. It's like you could be Ileana, or you could be Ileana the Swift, right? The Swift being your title. And that's something that you can, there's a way to start out with it if you choose a particular background, but you can also earn it during play. And a title is a thing that you can call on once per scene to give yourself a small bonus if it's appropriate to what your title is for. Okay, so it's a conditional bonus you can apply once in a while, which is really cool. As I said, you can start with it, but earning it is also a really fun thing too. Built into the game at the end of the session, one of the things you can do is say, hey, does anybody think that anyone did something really outstanding this particular session? And if there's a consensus that yes, JM's monk did something really cool, then you as a game master can say, cool, you have earned a title. What is that title? And then you get to kind of say, I am now, Agravax the Angry, or whatever your title ends up being. Beware, sometimes the group will pick your title for you.
Right. And it can change and evolve over time as your character changes and evolves. Maybe you shed one title, maybe it moves from the swift to the fleet-footed because you ran between Blackwall and Farron Rock, to send this message. It is not a static thing. And there's also a way to mechanically sort of bring it into play.
The situational bonus I was talking about.
Right.
Yeah, titles are one of the other things that kind of set this game apart, as a little narrative boost. But I think one of the coolest things about Myth, of course, is that it's based on the setting created for the board game. And we absolutely owe a great debt to Brian Schotten and Keith Lowe, the original creators of Myth. And those guys have worked with us very closely. We've been very happy to have them, as a part of the process. And it's funny, they actually watch some of our videos, which is
did they?
Yeah, I know. And they have helped us kind of come up with some interesting stuff. There's different combinations of species and archetypes, which are kind of like your race and your class if you were in another fantasy game that is legally distinct from this one. But if you wanted to play a character in the board game, like if you play an apprentice in the board game, they're pretty much all humans. Right? Like that's what the apprentice looks like. In Myth Tales of Legend, you can also play an apprentice, but they don't have to be a human. They could be a Harani, one of the rat people, or they could be a Spriggan, one of the tree people. That would be a very interesting and unusual character, actually.
Yeah.
I can see that one being fun. Each species has their own cool special abilities and modifiers. Those species are humans, elves, dwarves, spriggans, Irani, the rat people we mentioned, and the Tavians, which is a kind of a new species. Like they were shown in pictures in the board game, these mongoose people, and now JM and I have kind of come up with a whole history and culture. JM's done some really great work with them. And
It's been a lot of fun, like just figuring out why they've only been kind of seen in pictures and kind of trying to come up with a narrative reason for that, and sort of linking some of the archetypes that are cool and part of the board game, but don't necessarily feel like they might have a place to call home in the Four Kingdoms. And so we were able to sort of link all of that together narratively and say, hey, here's why these people are just now arriving or have just recently arrived and started spreading this knowledge throughout the Four Kingdoms.
And this is just the first wave. We've got more stuff planned. In the future, I can guarantee, we've already been asked, I could guarantee we're going to expand some of these species and create ways for you to play as TikToks and other things, which are the little clockwork guys that run around in the world of myth. Some of them have their own self-awareness and can think for themselves. But JM is going to tell us. I'm now informing JM. JM's now going to tell us about the archetypes, which are the different things you can play as once you've selected your.
So with Myth Tales of Legend, with Myth Dawn of Heroes, there are a ton of characters to play, and some of those characters have paths that they can take into other character types. And so for Myth Tales of Legend, we wanted to stay focused on this idea of new to being a hero. So that sort of helped us pare down our archetypes to sort of what we wanted to focus on. And to be clear, much like the board game, well, yes, you may start with a fire poker. The goal is that you don't stay with a fire poker. You will very quickly earn the gear that will mark you as a hero. But you do start at that initial. I've got a pot lid and a fire poker, and that's a heck of a lot of grubbers coming over the hill. Yeah. So the archetypes that we've picked and started expanding on is we have the Alchemist, sort of your herbalist, your creator of potions and herbal near magical goods. You have your soldier, which is the person who, as we just said, picks up the pot lid and the fire poker to defend those around him. You have the brigand, someone who is left sort of the nicer parts of civilization behind to try and find a way for themselves in the world. The apprentice, which is the mages of the Four Kingdoms. They're sort of elemental mages that are subjected to something called the charring. As the more they use magic, the more their skin turns into this sort of cinderous red color, or their fur, or in the case of a spriggan.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting.
Now I totally want to play Firebrand the Spriggan Apprentice, and like as I cast magic, it sort of like looks like there's always embers burning like deep within like under the bark. We have the acolytes.
I do.
That's right. Maybe it should be something like Flock the Spriggan Apprentice, because then you can smell what the flock is. No, never mind. You have the acolyte, who is the who channels the divine. There is divinity in the world of myth, whether it's the Morning Lord or the Shadow or several of the other sort of demigods that can be called upon. The hunter, the archer, sort of the difference between the two is the hunter has more of a, I'm going to chase you down. I have my quarry and I'm after them. Whereas the hunter or the archer is more of your traditional, I master the bow in the same way that the pupil masters the sword. We have the skald, which is sort of our warrior bard, the monk, and the pupil. So you have the way of the fist and the way of the blade is kind of how we explain them from the Tavian homeland. The swashbuckler, because there are flintlocks, there's black powder in the Four Kingdoms. So the Swashbuckler is sort of your Errol Flynn, Daredevil, Captain Jack Sparrow type. And then the Trickster, who actually is sort of the engineer. The one who kind of, Ross mentioned the TikToks. There are clockworks and animatronics in the world of the Four Kingdoms. And the Trickster is just starting on that path to sort of master this new art of engineering.
Yes. So we have 6 species, 12 archetypes you can combine in different ways. We have, again, we have many videos on character creation that will take you through every step if you want to check out more in depth. But there's, suffice to say, there's other things as well. There's talents and backgrounds and skills and attributes and things. We go through all of that in our videos. But each archetype, it's important to note, each archetype has its own little special ability that only it has.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important because it kind of sets them apart and says, like, this is the thing that they get to do. In the case of the spellcasters, they all can cast spells. Some spells are restricted. Like, for example, the Acolyte only casts a certain group of spells, and the Apprentice only casts a certain group of spells, because there's elemental spells and there's faith, and those are different things. And this, the way that they, anyway, suffice to say, we could go on and on because we literally have recorded hours about on this topic. But I think I would like to move on from here and talk about one more thing that sets Myth, Tales, Legend apart. That is our dynamic enemies. And
yes.
We have an example of one of these in the Quickstart. If you go check out the Lost Barrow, our main bad guy, who is Xanthi Fleetfoot, she has the fast template, okay? And what this means is basically, in Myth, Tales, Legend, we wanted bad guys to have the ability to really have an impact on the battlefield, even if there's only one of them. And so what we did is we created these templates. Some of them are things like fast or strong or tough or scary. And they're a themed list of abilities that they get to do, usually on their turn or after a player's turn, or even in response to something that the players get to do. So it means that a boss monster, somebody really tough and strong like Xanthi Fleetfoot, or in her case, really quick and swift, as her name implies, she gets to do things and have more of an impact on a particular encounter with her than an ordinary named critter would. Like, you can have a named lieutenant. You might have, Mr. Femur, who is a particular named unholy undead character, and that guy, he might be tougher or stronger than an individual shambler. But Xanthi Fleetfoot has not just a name, but she has this template, which means she gets to do a lot more than a typical a character of her type would get to do. And I think this is something that's really cool and interesting. It's going to be especially cool and interesting for DMs, but I think it will also make for memorable encounters for players, where they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I remember that guy. That was the guy who on their after I took my turn, she ran around so quickly she hit everyone in the party because she was that quick." And it also encourages, I believe, it encourages the game master to be really descriptive and narrative about their abilities if they have a particular theme like this.
Well, and I think that we. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I mean, there's also, we have, as Ross was saying, like for named monsters, yes, you can apply a dynamic template, but there's also threat abilities that only named monsters can use. So you can have like a generic unholy lieutenant, sort of the faceless hordes, and we have horde rules in case that's the way you want to go. But then you could just say, well, this guy has this threat ability, but these dynamic templates really make it feel both scary, which I felt was really something that a lot of the people in the playtest felt about Xanthi's Fleetfoot. Like the fact that she had these reaction abilities and the fact that she wasn't sort of bound by the typical action economy. But on top of that, it gives you the opportunity as the DM to tell, I think, more interesting stories with more interesting ways to implement your threats and your big bad evil guys.
Yeah, threat is a GM resource that the game master can then spend to do various things. There are abilities that you don't have to be a named guy to spend threat on, like it depends on their creature type. But yeah, again, long story. Go check out Ulysses International. We get into all of this more at length over there. But let's talk
and if
a
you
little
guys
bit
have any
about
questions,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry about that. I was just going to say, if you guys have any questions, put them in the chat. Our producer, Robert, will get them over to us, and we'd be glad to answer anything that we've been talking about or any other questions you have while we're doing this. This is not just, hopefully, this is not just us talking about Myth, although we love to do it.
Yes, yes. I mean, it could be we're talking to an empty room. I don't know, but let's hope not. But yes, the idea is that you can definitely put your comments in here. We will absolutely respond to them. We just, as he said, we have recorded many episodes of this thing, so sometimes we'll be like, yeah, we already covered that. So the Lost Barrow adventure. Why don't you tell us about that, JM?
All right. Well, I actually have it up, and this was sort of fun for me to write. Ross and I chatted a lot about this, kind of refining some ideas. And essentially, the Lost Barrow is an adventure that kind of takes you through how to run a myth adventure. And so there's a lot of GM advice. There's a lot of GM resources throughout the whole thing. It is not. I don't want to say it's hand-holding, because it's not. But it's designed for, if you've never run Myth, if you've never picked up a role-playing game before, we're going to call out in the adventure, hey, here's a unique mechanic of Myth, or here's a unique way that Myth handles this. Make sure you highlight X, Y, and Z. Or in this scenario, the soldier's ability could be very useful. So remind the soldier that they have this ability. But essentially, one of the big themes of Myth is that, well, a couple of things. One, that there is this weight of age. There have been multiple ages to the world, and many of the threats that your heroes are going to be faced are not new threats. They're just forgotten threats. Especially the previous age to this one, the Age of Legends. So much magic and technology and dimensional travel was available that the world is poorer for everything they've lost, but also poorer because they don't know what's out there. And so in this adventure, the heroes, they end up saving a merchant. That's kind of the initial hook, saving the merchant from a threat of unholy, and unholy are just sort of the undead of the myth world, and end up heading to this town that lies under this curse. And it comes from this Lost Barrow. The town is named after someone from the Age of Legends, and something has happened that has caused this dead hero to stir in her grave. And you sort of leaning into the narrative storytelling and one of the other themes, which is what to do with knowledge. One of the big themes that we sort of see in the board game, and that we were able to kind of extract and distill as, hey, this is one of the themes that we constantly want to be pressing into with Myth, is like, what do we do with the knowledge from the last age? It didn't, in some people's eyes, it didn't help the last age. In fact, it caused its downfall. The darkness, which, if you're familiar with the board game, is sort of the big looming evil threat of the setting. The darkness was able to corrupt heroes. It was able to betray heroes. It was able to infiltrate and soften hearts when action was needed. And so there are some people who are like, listen, the past knowledge needs to stay dead and buried. And there are others who are like, oh, that's silly. We need to forge ahead and recover what we can to rebuild, sort of ignoring the fact that a lot of terrible things were created and invented and summoned during the Age of Legend. And so there are these two poles that the heroes can kind of choose to move between, maybe align with one or the other. And so one of the unique things is the cause that set off this curse and the disturbing of the Barrow, we leave in the hands of the PCs. We use the campfire mechanic that Ross was talking about, sort of this storytelling mechanic, to, after the end of the second act and they've sort of gathered the information, well, what do your heroes think is going on? And we give two possible outcomes for the GM to then, based off what their heroes decide, kind of go forward. And let's just be clear, this is something GMs do all the time. I come to the table with a plan, and my players are discussing the plot points, and they come up with something way better than what I had. So we're just sort of leaning into that and sort of making it a core part of the adventure. And so then Act 3 is, of course.
That's literally my favorite part, is the campfire scene at the end of Act 2, where the player characters, they basically make a decision by consensus, and that choice that they make has an impact in Act 3. It literally kind of tells the GM, okay, so now this is how Act 3 is going to go. It's different based on what they decide. That's something I really like.
I really enjoyed writing it. I hope it came through clear. And so if you play it, let me know. I would love to hear about it. I've got to run it a couple of times. We've read through it sort of ad nauseum. Questions from the editor have been answered and resolved. So I'd love to hear thoughts about it out in the wild. Now, Ross, there was another question for you about the Quickstart. What's the process of making that?
Yeah, that's something that's interesting too. I've actually made a lot of quick starts in my career. I made quick starts for all the 40K role playing games. I made quick starts for other things. I essentially made a quick start for anyway. I'm not getting into it. Let's just say I made a lot of them. So making this quick start was definitely one that I was like, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing. And for me, one of the first things that I need to do for making a quick start is I want to make it easy to run. Like you should, it's called a quick start, man. You shouldn't have to spend a lot of time and effort to get this thing to work. So that means it's got to have pre-generated characters. The Lost Barrow has pre-generated characters.
Some really nice ones.
Yeah, agreed. It's got to have a basic set of rules. It's got to be, you have to be able to, as a GM, pick this up, read through the rules. And it shouldn't take you, a whole day. It should take you some time, but not a whole day, to be like, okay, I now know what the rules are. There should be plenty of examples so the game master isn't lost. And there should be, it should be fairly, what's what I'm looking for here. The layout should help you be able to find things. Like there should be, nothing should be hidden in little blocks of texts. It should be like, here's the rules for combat, and all the rules for combat are right there. Here's the rules for damage and healing, and all the rules for damage and healing are right there. So yeah, it's got to be organized. That's the word I was looking for. It's got to be organized. Thank you. And so quick starts are an interesting thing. Now, because it's a quick start, it is just the basic rules. It's really just a taste. The intent of the quick start is for you to be able to play it and say, I like this or I don't like it. You get an idea of what the game is about and whether it's going to be something you want to continue. So yeah, there's some rules, there's some of the aspects. We give you a taste of what the game is capable of, but we don't put the whole thing in it because that would be counterproductive. So yeah. Now, the chat is now asking us about anticipated product rollout schedule. So we are looking at a Kickstarter towards the end of the year. We've got some pretty great products. We've got a player's guide. We've got a game master's guide. We've got an adventure guide. We've got a beginner set that JM is writing right now with a lot of really cool. It's actually a campaign. It's a whole campaign of taking your player characters from one point to another point. We're going to have tokens for all the resources in the game. I think some really cool metal coins are being worked on, and we're going to have dice and campfire cards, which are these fun little things you can play during. We have examples of campfire cards in the quick start as well. Yeah, so there's definitely some cool stuff coming in the first wave of Myth Tales of Legend. And we've already talked about some of the stuff in our Ulisses International channel videos. We've talked about some of the things we really want to do. I would love to do a Blackwall box set, and JM really like to do one about the Dusk Court, right? Was that it?
Oh yeah.
No, it was High Haldor, I think.
High Haldor, yeah. Grimmalore. I want to do a Grimmel. Can you save this falling dwarven hold before it is overrun by elementals? I think that would just be the coolest box set to do, and I would nerd out so much.
check out our Blackwall video because we talk about what would be awesome in a Blackwall box set kind of product.
Yeah.
So we've actually been talking ourselves into things as we've been going through these. But yeah, so the initial stuff we're gonna release for Myth Tales of Legend is going to include player's guide, which is all the rules, the characters, the archetypes, character creation, talents, backgrounds, all of that stuff. Actually, the background section is something that JM and I are very, very happy with.
Yeah,
and we will
Ross has been working hard on that. Yeah,
we'll probably do a video on that in the future. Then there's going to be the Game Master's Guide, which is going to talk about an expanded look at the setting, and it's going to have themes and tropes and how to run and a bestiary and various other things that a game master needs to run Myth Tales of Legend, and some more rules. And then there's the adventure guide, which is going to have adventures and also how to create adventures for Myth. And then we have our starter set, which includes this is going to be it's going to be like the Quickstart, but bigger and a lot more expanded. It's going to have actually a zoomed in sort of look at a particular region. Tell us about this region and the adventures. And
so I just finished up. I've got to do some edits, and I'll get it over to you, Ross. But I've just finished up sort of the setting guide to Myth and the Riverlands, and it is. So it's kind of a parsed down version from the GM's guide, just a high level view of the Four Kingdoms and its history, and an in-depth view of like 4 towns in the Riverlands, and a very deep dive into kind of what Three Rivers, the capital, was like, and then the Dimwold, which if you've watched, we talked a little about the Dimwold. I don't know that we've got that deep into it yet, but I'm ready for that video when we do it now, which is the home of the Dust Court Kingdom of Elves, as well as the Moonglow Spire, which is sort of the incursion point into the Four Kingdoms for this new threat that was just in the latest version of the rules, the Lucanine, which are basically the werewolves of Myth. And so the adventure, the linked adventures in the Quickstart in the starter set are going to take heroes, get them involved in this Lucanine invasion, and then bring them to the halls of power of the Three Rivers and help them decide what is the best way to deal with this threat. So
one of the cool things about Myth Tales of Legends, we're advancing some of the narrative of the world of Myth. We're moving the timeline forward a little bit with events and things that are happening. And those are also reflected in the board game Dawn of Heroes. If you see Eric's video on Dawn of Heroes, or I believe he's got a panel here at this con about it, he will talk about like probably what's happening. We're doing very similar things. Now, with all that in play, there's a question from the chat about acolytes. Are acolytes blind? What's the deal with them? So I'm going to say this is what I believe, and there is okay. So first of all, no, not all acolytes are blind.
Yeah.
Let's be really clear about that. 2, acolytes, especially as they're portrayed in the miniatures and a lot of the artwork, those guys are the ones who follow the Lord of the Morning, Morning Lord. Okay.
Yeah.
And the Morning Lord is a god of sun. He's a god of light. He's a god of goodness. But the acolytes of the Lord of the Morning tend to look at the light in the darkness a lot, and that actually, one of the reasons why they wear these things is to kind of like make it easier for themselves to see that aspect of the world. Now, if you want to play an acolyte who is blind but sees through the power of his faith, that is a talent that you can get as a player character.
Yeah.
So yes, some acolytes are blind but can still see, and that's kind of awesome. And that is something you can do in the role-playing game. But in the world of Myth in general, no, not all acolytes are blind. Some acolytes who serve the Morning Lord are blind, but not all. Because you can also be an acolyte of other gods. You could be an acolyte of the Shadow, which we talked about in one of our videos. I think that would be a really cool character. You can be an acolyte of Lunan Canaan. You could be an acolyte of any of the other gods.
Yeah. And we've also kind of expanded and have a couple of demigods that can also step in and be sort of the focal power of an acolyte's worship. So, I feel like
So
Hearn is just too good of a character to not have acolytes.
yeah, the Bright Legion would probably want to have a word with you.
You know.
I think the Bright Legion would be like on your doorstep going, a dude. But yeah, Hearn is not an actual god.
No, he's not.
Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much my answer to that. I guess the next thing I'd ask about is what is in the lore of Myth and in the starter set. We've talked about where we're doing this stuff, and you talked a little bit about the campaign. Can you tell us more, like if in the starter set, what we're doing, like who comes to get us and says we need to do the thing?
So we have a couple of so that part hasn't been I haven't started onto that book yet. But the couple of options that we have is the main one that we're leaning into, and you'll see her appear in the Lost Barrow, is this figure of Tenebrae. Tenebrae is she is a mysterious and powerful figure who seems to have her own grudge against the darkness. She doesn't walk in the light. I think the term that the way I termed it is she fights the darkness with no hope of shelter from the light. No one knows if she actually was an agent of darkness who saw kind of what the darkness had in store or was betrayed by the darkness. But she now, her chosen, which are to call them a faction is very in quotes, right? They're the people that Tenebrae has sort of gathered and set on paths for her own purposes. So you'll see her in the Lost Barrow adventure. Other options that we're looking at are in Devonshire, the Dusk Court, who is fighting this desperate battle against the Lucanine. They have a vested interest in getting heroes to aid them. There are several. There are different possibilities kind of going forward from here. I will say to the person who asked about the acolytes, well, not all acolytes are blind. We are leaning into the fact that all apprentices suffer from this reddening of their skin that we call the charring. So that we have made kind of ubiquitous among the apprentices.
Yes.
Well, Ross, I spilled all of the beans on the campaign while you were gone.
Yeah. A quick technical difficulty there.
That's right.
I'm back. But yeah, that's pretty much what we wanted to get across about Myth, Tales of Legend. If you have further questions about the game or the setting, please check out our Ulisses International channel. JM and I are recording quite a few episodes about how the rules work, what the lore is about. We talk about characters we want to play, and we talk about adventures we want to run and places we want to visit.
And bad guys we want to create.
Oh, geez, yeah. There's actually it's a very neat setting. There's a lot of cool stuff happening, and I'm a big fan of the world of Myth. So we hope you guys will be too. Please be sure to check out the Lost Barrow, which you can grab on Drive-Thru-RPG. It is at a pay what you want, so you can just grab it, and let us know what you think. I would welcome any feedback from the community.
Yes.
We're both very excited to see how Myth fans specifically are interested. Also, people who just like cool new role-playing games and want to check something out that may offer them a slightly different, way to role-play. So yeah, be sure to get, chime in and give us a shout. We got about 6 minutes left. So
any other questions?
Yeah, last call for alcohol. What do you guys got?
That's right. You can also check out. I run the live stream games on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights. I'm doing Torg right now. Ross has graciously joined my game of the Four Horsemen of Torg. and I run the Fading Suns game on Thursday nights. We're wrapping up this second arc, and we'll possibly be jumping into our third arc kind of immediately. So,
yeah, for sure. So, I guess the last thing I would say about Myth Tales Legend is it does take a lot of cues. If you like Torg Eternity, there's a lot of cues from Torg Eternity that have been translated over to Myth Tales of Legend. There's interaction attacks. There's dramatic skill resolution. There's things that you will find very very appealing to you if you like Torg Eternity in Tales of Legend as well. That's one of the things I took a lot of inspiration from, of course. And there's a lot to cover, but I'm running out of time. What's different from Wrath and Glory? That's
a great question.
Well, the bones of the game are the same. It is D6. You roll your dice pool, you compare. Obviously, Wrath and Glory had things for tiers, which are no longer a thing because we don't need that in Myth. And there's a much greater focus on narrative. We've streamlined we learned quite a few things and streamlined quite a bit of the rules from the Wrath and Glory system. So I would say that Myth is a refined version of the rule set. And obviously, I mean, it's just because it's based on low power fantasy, there's just a lot of balance issues that have been kind of, lowered down for that particular approach. But if you have played and enjoyed Wrath and Glory, you're going to be able to play and enjoy Myth Tales Legend very easily. The Campfire system is basically the basics of Wrath and Glory with a few extra things and maybe some of the extra stuff from Wrath and Glory cut off. But yeah, it's a good system, and I think you guys are going to like it. Again, you can see it for yourself right now. Go check out the Quickstart. We worked hard on that. We're very proud of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean.
So Robert Ducci here, Ulisses community manager, and now that the Lost Barrow is out, I am definitely going to be reading that on the Ulisses Grab Bag show. So that's like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I come on and do various things with all of our properties, and I'm definitely going to read this. I just got it the other day myself, so I haven't really had a chance to read it. So I'm excited to read the rules and the story that JM created. So that will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. At 11 a.m. Pacific time on the Twitch channel here.
Actually, Robert's got a bit of experience with role-playing games and adventures and things of that nature. He used to run the D&D Adventures League here in my area of Denver for quite a while. So yeah, I'm excited to see what you think.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm stoked to read it. So if you're gonna want to hang around at 7:00, we've got the Dark Eye for new GMs with Tayo and myself. We'll be talking about that. If you want more Myth stuff, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific, there will be Myth lore and setting, and so join us then. And if you want, Eric just released the demo for Myth Dawn of Heroes, so you can go to the website to get that stuff. And I think Eric is in the chat right now. He's been throwing some links up there, so he can throw a link for that in there as well. So with that, with that, thanks Ross.
Yeah, thanks
JM. Yeah, this has been a really great show, and this will be up on YouTube next week as well.
Awesome.
Also, JM and I are both in the Myth lore panel, and then I will be reappearing for the Torg panel for what were you thinking? So yeah, yeah. So be sure to tune in for us there. And thanks again to Robert Ducci and to Ulisses International and to Ulysses Con for letting us talk about our new game and show off our Quickstart. So thanks to all of you guys for showing up for this great convention. We are so happy that you're here. We hope you're all staying safe. And JM and I are just big fans of everything. So until next time.
Keep telling stories.